Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Mr. Barasa and today I'll be talking about how you can budget for 20,000 salary. If you are in Kenya, that is 20,000 Kenya shillings, but if you are watching me beyond Kenya boundaries, that is roughly around $200. So in this case, I'll talk about the popularly known rule of 50, 30, 20 rule. This rule is used all over the world and it was invented or introduced by Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren was an expert as well as a US senator who find out that there was an economic struggle when it comes to budgeting, and now she find out that the best way or a straightforward way on how to budget for an income was actually 50, 30, 20 rule. In this case, she did this work by her daughter called Amelia Warren. So in this case, she wrote a book by the name All Your Worth. All Your Worth. You can actually go and look at this book as it talks more about how to do the budgeting, what you have to do step by step in terms of knowing what to put where and how best to go about the budgeting. So as I've told you, she was a bankruptcy expert when it comes to economics, and it reached a time where the country was actually experiencing some economic pressures when it comes to struggling with how to budget. For in this case, they were middle income earners where they were struggling, and she did a research on how best to enable them to have a straightforward kind of way of budgeting for their income. In this case, she provided this rule. So this rule has been popularly been used, and it's now all over the world, and people have embraced it and they're using it for their day-to-day budgeting in terms of income. So I'll be talking about how to go about it. Now, in this case, you will find out that if you can't allocate every coin that you earn, every coin that you get, then it becomes so difficult for you to manage that income. In this case, let's visualize on this pie chart. So let's assume this is 50%. And then let's assume this is 20% and this is 30%. So this pie chart, it's actually expressing on how I'm going to allocate this 20,000 salary. If you are watching me from Kenya, 20,000 salary. The best way how you can always have them allocated when it comes to this rule, which is 50, 30, 20 rule. So if you're earning 20,000, I'll give it this as a want. No, I mean a need. This is a need. So what is a need? A need is actually something that you can't do without. That is what a need is. So what are the needs of somebody? Obviously their clothing, their shed, and then have food. So most definitely shed, that goes to rent. We have utilities, we have groceries, that is food, groceries, we have transport. So this one, all of them, when you talk about 50% of 20, then it has to amount to 10,000. In this case, if you are someone who is earning low or above 20,000, I'm not restricting this rule to apply for 20,000, but instead it can apply to whichever amount you're earning, because it's a standard way of allocating all your salary that you are getting. And I'm taking this as net but not gross. So I believe gross is salary that you are paid, and then after deduction, after tax and all the deductions, this is what it remains as net after taxes. This is what I'm talking about. So I'm subjecting this 20,000 as to this rule, because it's what after tax, it's what they have taxed, and then what remains is what I'm subjecting this rule to. Now, I've just said under the needs, that's what I'm talking about under the 50% rule. So that is now rent, utilities, grocery, and transport. So in transport, this is bus fare. In this case, I don't expect that maybe you have a car with 20,000 salary. That's why I'm talking about bus fare. And grocery things to do with beans, rice, vegetable, etc. Utilities, these are electricity, water bill, etc. Rent, this is where you live. You are paying a mortgage or rent. In that case, it falls under need. So that is under need, which we have seen that you have at least to pay 10,000. Now when I talk about 30%, these are the wants. So what is a want? So a want is something that it's not a must, or it's not essential to have in order for you to live a standard life. In this case, I'm talking about you having entertainment, you having to dining out, you having to do shopping, you having to do miscellaneous things to do with miscellaneous. These are unplanned inexpensive kind of commodities or services that you can always go ahead and purchase. Shopping, this is in terms of clothing, dining out, and takeaways. That all lies under 30%. In this case, 30% of 20, it has to come to 6,000. So in 20,000, you at least have to have 6,000 to cater for all your wants. And then remember, we've said 10,000, it will cater for the needs. So things to do in the entertainment. Assuming you have a TV in your living room, is it a must for you to go ahead and purchase another TV for the bedroom? No. So if you go ahead to purchase a TV, that means that is something you can always do away with. It's not a must for you to have it in order for you to run your day-to-day activity. Things to do with the dining out, you can always have yourself cook at home, but rather not going to dine out because it's expensive. Shopping, you always find a way how to do it affordable, not cheap but affordable. And then miscellaneous, it is an unplanned kind of inexpensive purchase, and in that case it can also arise in terms of impulse buying. For an impulse buying, you have to give it a 24-hour rule, where after these 24 hours ends and you feel like you don't need that commodity or that service that you want to purchase, then you can always cancel on purchasing that product or that item that you've just seen in the street or anywhere and have it cancelled. I'm going to talk about the so-called 20%. So remember, our rule is 50, 30, 20 rule. So I've talked about 50, I've talked about 30, now it remains 20. Now 20 is the most critical part in this channel that I want you to focus more. Why? Because 20%, if you're earning 20,000, that means that is 4,000. In this case, this, as you can remember, this was 50, this was 20, and this was 30. So when I talk about 20%, which is 4,000 in this case, this goes to savings and debt management. In this case, if you don't have an emergency fund, this is the right time to do this with this 20% emergency fund. Now, what is an emergency fund? Emergency fund is that fund you look aside to help you in emergency that will arise. In this case, if you lose a job, maybe in this case, for example, and you don't have an emergency fund, what will you do for you to get another job? It will actually give you a lot of stress when it comes to surviving and all that. You have to at least raise for 6 to 12 months, in this case, of the expense. These are the expense of around 6 to 12 months that will allow you to run a normal life without you going ahead to borrow or to enter into a debt that will actually again go and have you into a financial crisis. So in this case, you always have to start with emergency fund in terms of saving. Once you've done that, this is where again you go ahead to do what we call investments with this 20% of the pie chart, remember. So this is where you do the investments in terms of stocks, in terms of mutual fund or money market fund, in terms of circles if you are in Kenya. And then this is where you also do what we call debt repayment. If you have help, this is where you have to look into it and repay it back. All kind of debts they actually fall into this 20%. Now remember, this rule is 50, 30, 20. But if you're someone who is keen, you can always do away with some percentage here and do away with some percentage here and sacrifice in order for you to do what? To increase in this 20%. Why? Because this 20%, it's what will actually have you to stabilize your finances when it comes to attaining your financial freedom. In this case, I want to talk about how you can make 1M very, very easy with very little money. Assuming you have 5,000 that you can always squeeze when it comes to that 20%, and in that I've just talked about 50, 30, 20. If you can do away with some percentage here and put them into this 20% and have at least 5,000 that you can always pay comfortably in mutual fund. Assuming you are maybe investing with CIC group. In this case, you'll have to deposit at least 5,000 monthly, which will do a compounding, which you'll be investing it in a compounding factor. And if you do this in 10 years, just 10 years only, you'll have yourself 1,800,000 and 200, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you will raise this amount 1.08 and 200 shillings. This is what you can raise. This is at least at around interest of 8.7, the worst scenario. But if you consider just saving this 5,000, if you're not invested like in this mutual fund, times 120, it's 12 months times 10 years, you will have at least 600,000. So this is the power of compounding, where I've just told you, if you just save this amount in fixed account, this is what you can get, at least 600,000. But in the case of you saving it with a compounding factor, in this case mutual fund, maybe for example like CIC Group, you will get at least 1.08 M. That is a good idea. You can actually go ahead and work on that, because within 10 years, if you go ahead to sacrifice your life, to sacrifice something like 5,000, then I'm assuring you, within 10 years, you'll be a millionaire. This is something that I'm working on myself, and if you also go ahead and work on it, at least we'll have something to talk about, and we'll share out how it is going in this process. And I would like you to go ahead and comment down below on what you think about it. Now, this 50-30-20 rule is actually, or will actually require you to do evaluation and adjusting when it comes to budget from month to month, as this will not be a blanket kind of budget that will allow you to work with for years and years. But this will require you to adjust at some point, because if you are not earning from a salary, assuming you are a business person, a business has to have return at the end of the month or weekly, so you'll be evaluating yourself in terms of your earnings. In this case, if you've earned from a business, this means this month and the previous month will not be the same. So your budget has to be always be adjusted when it comes to checks and balances on how best to accommodate on what you have on the table. I'm so glad I've just been with you in this session. I would like you to comment down below on what you've liked most, or how best do you save your income, and let's keep educating each other in this channel. See you in the next video.